everybody. Welcome to episode 43 of Powerbombshells. I am Sam. That is Mel. And usually we're two broads who are here to talk about the wrestling we watch. However, it's been completely dominated by three huge stories that are actually all kind of intertwined when you think about it. And so we'll be focusing a lot on that today.
This week I'm like, oh, this week maybe can be like the last few weeks have been kind of calm.
Right.
Sure. And then I had all kinds of like IRL human things that I had to do. And of course, when you have a whole just myriad of crap you got to get through is when everything decides to like hit the fan, as it were. And it was very like, I remember picking up my phone on Tuesday and trying to catch up with the work.
Oh, I can only imagine. I'm like, yeah, because I know Tuesday was already busy enough for you with your IRL stuff, and then I was like, okay, well, this will be the topic that we talk about. That like we'll touch on this, and I'm sure there's we'll figure out what else to talk about. Like this will probably be our main thing, and then Wednesday happens. I was like, okay, well, that's interesting, and I was like, guess we'll have those two. Those are kind of related. And then the Sasha stuff came out, and I was like, all right, well, I guess our whole show's planned.
We didn't even like write our notes down until the last minute. Just like, because kayfabe, guys, like we're breaking kayfabe. We just not even, because it just like wrote itself down. I tried to get through. I got through the first part of the Observer when I was like waiting and doing stuff. But a lot of what I was doing was like I had to be active at the time, so it was
right.
Every like at the end of just about like 3 days in a row, basically Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it was about like mid-afternoon, and I'm like, oh, I got a whole bunch more stuff to catch up on. Holy crap.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to be interested. And then I ended up watching, like, I watched most of SmackDown on Friday.
I did. I watched SmackDown as well. I had it.
I can't help it. I kind of like the Bloodline storyline.
I do like the Bloodline storyline. I haven't really been watching as much lately, but I saw the person who I guess is behind like the Bray Wyatt stuff tweeted on Thursday and was like, you're not going to want to miss Friday. And so at first I didn't realize that's who it was, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I saw that Roman Reigns was going to be back, and I didn't realize that Roman Reigns had not been on TV since War Games, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it until he showed up.
And then I was like, oh, well, maybe they're going to do the Sammy stuff here, which is why, so that's the main reason I tuned in. And then I got to see, that's the first time I've seen Bray in a few weeks, and so we got the Bray and the Uncle Howdy. So I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, I have gotten to watch wrestling this week. It's just the other stories kind of dominated.
They've eclipsed the actual wrestling part.
Yeah, it did. And this happened, and it's interesting because when the Vince McMahon story broke a few months ago, it was the same. There were three big stories that week too. It was the Jeff Hardy DUI case, Vince, and then there was it Sasha then too? There was something. I
don't know, but that also right around the same time? Didn't of course his name completely escapes me. He is the MMA fighter from the Bay Area.
Cain Velasquez.
Didn't that happen somewhere in that range? And while that's not directly wrestling,
he did wrestle for WWE for a little bit.
And then I think he just got okayed to go wrestle again in
AAA. Yeah, he's wrestling for AAA. He got approved for like several dates, I think. I'm not keeping up with that case super close, but I know obviously since Fight Game Media, we have some people who obviously keep up with that stuff more than we do. So I've seen some things here and there about it. But yeah, I think that was right around the same time. So it just seems like
power
news with the thing with Vince and the Vince news, and then something else came out after that, and then that happened again this week. It's almost, which I thought it, and several people have talked about it, how it seemed like the Mandy Rose firing was to distract from the latest.
Oh, that was definitely that was like, look over here.
Yeah. Which is probably not something you want to look over here at when you just had your former CEO have another allegation against him. It's a new one. And it also ties in the Rita Chatterton case that has, that has been there for decades and was pushed away, and then it's come back to light, the last few months people are talking about it. And I didn't even know about the case until like a year or two ago. I think is when I had first heard of it. And I had no idea. And then people
Me too. I heard of it from you.
Yeah, and people were like, oh, so it's kind of funny that this is coming out the same day as the Vince McMahon documentary on Vice. And I was like, I mean, maybe they did hold it until then, but I mean, I was like, I don't really think the Wall Street Journal cares enough about Vice.
Street Journal is not sitting around looking at what things are. I mean, that
I don't think so. And then the Vice documentary was not bad, but if you are following the case, then it was all information you already knew, and they used a lot of clips from Dark Side of the Ring. So for people like my dad who only know about the case by reading my articles, basically, like I'm sure something like that would have been really good for him to like hear other people talking about it. I think that probably, so for some people, I think it was really good, but for most of us who are familiar with the story, I mean, and because Vice generally puts on really good documentaries, I thought it would have been a little, like, I thought they would have went after him a little bit harder, but I don't know if it's because there's open cases and there's NDAs and if that kind of affects, what they discuss. But yeah, I thought it would have, I was expecting a little bit more from it, but I mean, I thought it was fine. But I did see a few people in my timeline calling it a hit piece, and I was like, it's not a hit piece when he did all of these
They call it a hit piece. See, that's the misperception place that people go to when it's like, my team is being attacked, and because I can't allow my team to be attacked, I am going to go ahead and be like, you went after this guy. And it's like, no, these are actual facts.
Yeah, and he did all the things that they're just like, having a discussion about the many things he's done. And
I love the two extremes. I got to tell you, as someone who does not like currently write for anything. There's two things. One thing is I got caught up mostly by reading your SE Scoops article on what was going on, because you usually do a really good job. It was like,
thank you.
I was like scrolling through the thing. I'm like, oh, here, Sam's got an article about it. This will tell me everything I need to know. And it really did cover, like, you hit like it was a great article because everything that you needed to know, and gets like, you have a really, it's not too much. It's just the right amount. I don't feel like I'm like reading fluff, like I'm reading an actual article about it. Yeah. So it's great.
Yeah, and it's great. I was like, Sam will get me caught up. It's gotten to the point, sadly, that I've written about it enough that I can't remember which article has which information. So sometimes I have to go back and like, if I'm looking for a specific example, then I have to read through like a couple articles and be like, wait, where did I write this? Which article was this in? I was like, that's not really a good thing when I've written about it this many times that now I'm having to
think I read Wednesday because of Tuesday just being
so it was
like enveloped.
And it was interesting because 5 weeks earlier I had written, because that's when the WWE investigation and the special committee, they said it was closed. They didn't release their findings, and we don't know if they'll ever release the findings. Yeah, and then they dissolved. And so I was like, and I tweeted the case was over, and I put in parentheses, for now. 5 weeks later, here we are with a brand new allegation. And I was like, okay, well.
And another one that's similar to the other one, like that's a point that's been made and it needs to be repeated, is like when you have two allegations that are this similar, it starts to lend credence, one lends credence to the other. Mm-hmm. And obviously the guy is like out of his company because of this sexual abuse and coercion, and I mean, using abusive power. I mean, it's the whole picture. So something like this is like, but par for the course. Mm-hmm. But then he like, I don't know. It's like you can't figure it out, because then like literally he goes, I want to come back.
No. Do you want your company to tank? Because that's what's going to happen. I mean, it might take a while because there are some people who think that they can't separate Mr. McMahon from Vince McMahon.
No,
when Mr. McMahon is just which is what I wrote in my article. Mr. McMahon is a caricature of the real man, and we saw some of the behavior. Like, obviously, the most famous example is the Trish Stratus stuff that he was doing. That's art imitating life. Like, they wrote out, like, basically, it's like the writers knew the stuff that he was doing to women, and were like, let's make it a storyline and make Trish Stratus be the on the end of it because she's beautiful, and it would be believable because, you know, he would be. So it's just, yeah. And when you go back, like, the stuff was gross and terrible just in that context, but now having the full picture, which I don't even think is the full picture, but having even a greater picture of who this man is and how he acted and how he treats women like that, then you go back and look at it and you realize, like, it's basically they were writing out what he does to women, which is just even more gross than it was. All right, at the time.
Kids, I'm going to give you a word for today for you to look up. He's what we call a megalomaniac.
Yes.
The guy, he doesn't see it. It's like such a syndrome, is that he doesn't see himself as anything but a victim of people judging him. And and also, he believes his gimmick.
Yep.
Like you said it. And I loved that little, it's like, I live my gimmick. It's like, yeah, but your gimmick is a really bad gimmick.
Well, and I think the other case that you could also say, Ric Flair has always lived the gimmick, but now we realize, especially, just how much he did. And even like now that we have the story from the plane ride from hell and having the firsthand account of what happened to the woman, she bravely told exactly what happened to her. So then you see that Ric Flair is another example of that, of living the gimmick, except for you're a terrible person. And it's, for me, I know some people can separate, but I can't. I was like, it's just completely tarnished everything. And I live in Flair country. So
pardon my sirens going off. Yeah, it's another weekend where they're as upset as we are about something. And yes. My thing, so we talk about things like speaking out and everything, right? And we talk about, like, nobody's been, people have been mentioned and all these things. Like, the biggest problem that I have here is that I see a lot of people, like, who's gone to court, who's been held accountable for their actions in a court of law. Where are the, like, people should be going to the law about these things are illegal, of sexually abusing somebody, putting your hands on someone when it's not. That's, the law needs to handle this stuff. And I feel like nobody's been brought to account by their companies, by the law.
They're not even being, I was gonna say, they're barely being held accountable by their own peers, because a few of them, and especially, like, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I was like, in the beginning, there was all this outrage and we're gonna clean up the business, which I knew then that was a lie, but
yeah, but that's like, always,
I thought they were gonna do a little, and I thought we were gonna get a little bit, but I mean, like,
that's the game.
We've seen, WWE released the people that they could part with, and it was pretty much all NXT UK guys. Except for Trent Seven, who is now on AEW TV, and he has allegations against him from multiple people. But yeah, it's just, so a lot of them are worming their way back in the business. I think probably the only person who's probably not is maybe Marty Scurll, just because.
I think people like.
I think
Joey Ryan, Jimmy Havoc's name came up on an Observer recently, and I was like,
he's completely out of wrestling, I believe.
You guys remember why Jimmy's not wrestling, though,
right? Exactly. Like, for a brief second, when Kip Sabian was talking about, like, when he was hinting at who his surprise opponent was for Orange Cassidy, I was like, for a split second, I was like, is it Jimmy Havoc? Because he and Kip Sabian were really good friends.
I think some other people maybe must have felt like, that way.
Please don't be. And then they brought Trent Seven, who, while his allegations were nowhere near as that, he has been named. And so I was like, still super disappointing that these people. So I was just like, are they just not? Did they have nobody in HR who was like, let's make sure that these people were not named and speaking out before we bring them in? Or do they think, oh, it's been 2.5 years, nobody's going to remember? WWE kept him. They didn't fire him. So there must have been nothing to those, which is an argument that I see a lot is, oh, well, and then one of the women that was involved, she gave a separate, like, she still gave some information, but she was like, well, this is actually how it happened. And so people are like, oh, well, he's cleared. And I was like, no, there's still another woman. And even that woman said that happened to her. So at the very least, he's a sex pest and not somebody you really want to have in your locker room. But I mean, obviously we've seen with speaking out that it just, for most people, they don't care. I mean, that's what it comes down to. They just don't care.
I think I mean, there's been so many movements for women to try and, get like I guess, justice that women deserve when it comes to this sort of thing, both like in just living life and also like in an actual court of law where justice is supposed to be served and people are supposed to be like, this person did do this and we have evidence of this and this person needs to, pay the price for that. And nobody ever, because it becomes a big shouting match and nothing ever becomes tangible. It doesn't go to these women don't get justice. They don't, these people aren't prosecuted and put, there in a normal work setting, like a regular shoot job, if any of us did any of the things that any of these people are accused of, we'd be fired immediately, and that would be the end of it.
Well, and that's what they just want to say, oh, it's just wrestling, or even in the case of the Me Too movement, they're like, oh, it's a celebrity. They want to say, oh, well, they brush it off, or they come up with reasons and excuses.
Well,
and I was like,
is business, and at the end of the day, I think what they think, and it is that they don't care, and the reason they don't care is they say, are the advertisers going to be pissed off if we put this person on the TV?
Well, I think the advertisers need to do some job. They need to do some more investigating. Well, I mean, look, we talked about it last week, how
that's why we vote with our wallet and we don't buy those products.
Right. And which is why I have an issue. Sometimes I have issues watching. I mean, clearly AEW, we've talked about, has employed some people who were named and speaking out. And we've talked about that before. But I mean, that's the same thing with WWE. They continuously, like, they pushed Matt Riddle. They put titles on him. They finally do something and they send him, he's off TV because he's in rehab. They put him in, and so it's just like, but they continuously, and they just tell, well, and you can see like for Jordan Devlin, who is now, they gave him a new name, like that would make people forget who I guess they didn't want people, maybe they didn't want their sponsors to Google Jordan Devlin and see the photos that come up of what he did to his partner at the time. And so they renamed him. And I was like, we still see it. So, I mean, it's just, the advertisers, but I don't know if the advertisers even know. I'm like, just look up, just Google speaking out, and you would see how many names that are in WWE and even in AEW that are still on TV and they're still getting pushed and they're getting titles. And these women aren't getting anything except for re-traumatized if they see their abuser on TV with a belt.
In there, it's fucking stupid.
That's okay.
That was our one. But
this episode might have a lot of those because I was like by the time when we were getting to this, I was so irritated with everything.
Everything that we're talking about correlates to what is ultimately happening here is that you have a man who is a powerful man, and they look at market. They don't care about anything but the share prices. Like that is what they care about. They care about the bottom line. These are corporations whose primary focus. They don't care what's going on anywhere, and it does happen in normal places just as much as it happens in entertainment places. But that's what that boils down to, and that is wrong.
It is. Well, and then seeing that's the thing is, Vince wants to come back, but I was like, I don't think the shareholders are going to let that happen, because I think I saw something like the number there since he's been gone, like it's been up like 15% or something like that. And they were just saying that he was saying he got bad advice and it would have blown over. And I was like, I mean, maybe to an extent, but I was like, I don't know what he's going to do.
I'm going to echo someone that said it that's smarter than me. I believe that it was one of the either Dynamite Show or Boom gentlemen, but they said, it blew over because you left.
I think that was Garrett that said that.
Oh, okay. Garrett. Okay.
But yes, but you're correct.
It was Garrett. Yeah. I mean, it was, sorry. I listen to a lot of brilliant voices. Garrett is like,
there's a lot of people weighing in on this topic.
and I was like, yes, like he nailed it. That's right. It went away because you went away, and it actually empirically it helped your company. You're up in the 1849, which is
you're the number one shareholder. It's helping you.
I was reading about how that functions a little bit. I didn't get far enough into the Observer, but Dave actually, pardon me, he actually explains how that works. So that because he only owns just under 40% of the actual stock. But he owns like over 80% of the voting power, because when he made the deal that he made when it got bigger, he was smart, genius. He basically made it so he could never get voted out of his company. He looked around at the business, and that happens everywhere. That happens all the time, everywhere.
Yep.
So he structured his contract so that he could not be voted out. But it doesn't like preclude them from like boards having to approve sales and all kinds of things. And there are still like potential antitrust things out there. But just generally speaking, like it's financially bad for your company for you to come back right now.
Yeah. And they were I've mentioned it in the last 2 articles I've written about Vince, is there were rumors that they were thinking of inducting him into the Hall of Fame next year and giving him a proper send-off, since he had to retire unexpectedly, or whatever kind of way they're trying to spin it.
He was forced out now, is what he's trying to paint it as.
No, you weren't forced out.
And he feels like he got bad advice. It's
too bad.
It's like
I
actually think it's what it is again, it's a megalomania. Is like when you sit at home, he's been doing this like every day forever.
100%. And he's seeing how Triple H is changing things, and how
he's hiring back a bunch of people who are almost and Vince is the kind of person who absolutely is taking that personally. So every time Triple H brings somebody back, he's like, well, that's just a big finger to me. That's just a big finger to me.
All about me. He's destroying my company.
He's at home like stewing.
Good.
I know, but
yes, I know.
It's terrifying, because like there's a way that this could potentially happen, and the never say never factor. But I mean, there's literally ways that.
I don't think he's gonna test every possible way that he can, but hopefully they're and we talked about, like, we've all kind of talked about privately, like, who is leaking the information. He's got to know it's coming from somebody inside, very high up. So I mean, I'm sure he probably thinks the same thing that most of us do.
Yes, that's the fun side of media.
It's either all 3 of them, or one of them, and he probably has guesses on who that is. And some people are wondering if Kevin Dunn is trying to find out information and then feeding it back to him, because he's still a McMahon yes man, probably, which wouldn't surprise me if that's what was happening.
One of my favorite things, because I'm still like new to some of the stuff, is that it's fascinating to watch everybody on all the networks. And I mean, because the wrestling community, it's not as big as we like to think it is. We're pretty niche.
Yeah.
But it is very fun to watch everybody putting on their not Christmas tinfoil hats and just going to town on guess who's leaking the
and like
sources.
They said, I mean, some people are saying sometimes the most obvious answer is the correct answer.
Yeah, I mean,
and you and I had our conversation about who it could potentially be and the reasons why, but I mean, really, all three of them, because it's got to be those three. I don't think it's anybody. I mean, I guess it could be like somebody not in those three, but it's most likely those three.
And I guess that we should say the three that we're talking about.
Yeah, we'll talk
Stephanie,
about that.
Are we
go ahead?
No,
go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say so Stephanie McMahon, Nick Khan.
Mm-hmm.
The third was actually Paul Triple H.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then there was you said Kevin Dunn, and there's one more person that's also still in there that was one of the...
Some people have wondered if it was Shawn Michaels, but from what most people have said that he wouldn't be privy to some of this information. Like, he's not high up enough to know.
Well, and I think that a lot of people, the impression I was getting from people is that he's not interested in the politics, so he doesn't know. He's not interested in the
politics, but he's the reason Mandy Rose got fired.
Well, that's a different kind of politics, though, because that's exciting. That's a perfect segue, Sam. That was fantastic.
Thank you for setting that up for me.
That was teed it up there. That was great.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I mean, that relates too in so much as like...
Yeah, so we've talked about the story. So go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I want you to explain it, because I think you'll do a better job explaining what went on with Mandy Rose than I will.
So, and I don't watch NXT. I quit watching back when the week after Johnny Gargano left. That's when I stopped watching, because NXT 2.0 was not for me. It's not geared towards me. I
end up knowing most of it from reading.
Yeah,
like, I just know most of it from reading about it or listening.
On Tuesday, NXT had their show. They suddenly had a title match between Mandy Rose and Roxanne Perez, which wasn't complete surprise, just because that's where the story was building to anyway. Those two were eventually gonna wrestle, and if some people, when we first heard rumors, because there were rumors earlier in the day that Mandy Rose was gonna drop the title that night, and so people just thought, they were like, well, why is it on a random Tuesday? But it's also the Tuesday after a premium live event, so they're like, well, maybe there's some new viewers who are gonna catch this, and maybe that's why this is happening. So Roxanne wins, ending Mandy's 413-day title reign. And then Wednesday, she is fired. And everyone is caught off guard. Reportedly, Mandy had no idea this was coming. So apparently, the reason why is because on her own website, she has... So there's a website called Fan Time, and then I guess you can run it through your personal website. And there are other women wrestlers who have... I don't know if they use Fan Time, but you use their website to have access to them, because like Deonna Purrazzo does it, Maria Kanellis, Savannah Evans. There's a lot of mostly women wrestlers who use Fan Time, and then I guess they can run it through their website. And so it's exclusive content that you pay for, and they have freedom to post what they want. And apparently some of the things that Mandy was posting was very risque. Some people have said that it was, borderline like X-rated type of things. I don't know. I have not seen them. I'm not going out of my way to look for these things.
Yeah, I don't need those bugs in my computer.
But it's unfortunate that, because apparently people were leaking some, so they are paying this money. So it was you pay $25 a month and you get this premium access. Well, some of these people were paying the $25 and then they were leaking the photos. And apparently this had, from what I've seen, has happened several times that people were leaking her photos. This was the first I had heard of it. But I have since seen that this has happened a couple of times, and she was like, please, and apparently she's messaged people and said, like, please remove this, and things like that. So some of the stuff, and so actually one of the things, Nikki ended up seeing it because she was under the Mandy Rose trend just to see what people were talking about.
Right.
And one of the photos came up and she was like, it appears that she's having shower sex with her fiance. Clearly, WWE is going to have some issues with that for whatever reason. And so I haven't seen it myself, but I don't think, I mean, there could be a doctored photo. I don't know. I don't know what content was out there, but whatever she was putting out there, it got out. And so apparently Shawn Michaels was told about the content on Tuesday and had a meeting with Matt Bloom, and had a meeting, and they said and demanded that Mandy Rose drop the title that night. From what's come out in the days after that, she was not given any type of warning. She was not told to take those photos down. She wasn't they didn't say, we're a little concerned, because some people have said it's because WWE has a contract with Mattel, and they didn't want the sponsors finding out, or that if fans were finding out, then the sponsors were eventually going to find out. So there's some information about that was supposedly why. But from what I understand, she was completely blindsided, was not given the opportunity to make it right, or within her contract or whatever, and they just fired her. And apparently, from what has been reported, she was making more per month and per year from the fan time content than she was making with WWE, which would not be surprising considering same thing happened with Toni Storm. She made like a year's worth she made like, what was it, like $40,000 in like 2 days or something insane like that. So I'm not surprised that these women, that's where they're turning to, because they're not making enough. And so they're building on their brand. And I think another issue with the Mandy Rose stuff is we see what her character is. It's very much an Attitude Era type of gimmick.
All they do is like sexualize her. That's
right. That's what she is. Like, they don't. I mean, just the entrance. Like, the entrance is basically her boobs, and it has been.
And then there a whole like multiple years worth of Corey Graves just like marking out about her, and
and there was even stuff with Stu Bennett saying things on commentary about her. So yeah, they sexualized her. And they said all these
things.
That's
like government level. That's like, no. You can't do that without us getting our piece.
That's 100% what that's how it comes off. Is and even they were using it for their own content. Like, if you see, like, I found a tweet from an article that it will be coming out probably today, not to plug my own stuff, but that's the reason I found
plug
it.
Your own stuff.
I found it from I found the tweet from somebody else, but then I ended up using it. It's from 2021, and it's a video of them promoting 3 women's matches. And it's just like close-ups on the lips, close-ups on just the different body parts, and not just of Mandy, but the other women who are having matches. But that's how you're promoting women's matches in 2021. Like, so she's taking, and so they use that on all their social media. That's how they promote Mandy and Toxic Attraction. They promote them basically because of what they look like, not for what they can do in the ring. Even putting on a title on her for 400 days. It was still about what she looked like, and that's her gimmick. That's what they made her. And so she has a website where she's using that to boost her income. Just to boost her income.
Too far.
But they weren't getting a cut of it, and that's where the problem was. It was the same. I mean, they've done this before. Zelina Vega had a Twitch account and was making money from that, and they fired her. I mean, they eventually brought her back. But so it's like you can have this, but only on our terms. Like, you can't. And I was like, but she's supplementing her income because she's not making enough from you that she's having to do this. And so now.
Yeah, right. If you paid her a proper amount of money, like you paid the other wrestlers that you're giving these kinds of pushes to, like, then this wouldn't be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
She wouldn't need a side hustle if you paid her good.
Right. And I thought one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting about this situation is there's not been a lot of public support for her from her own peers. Her Toxic Attraction stablemates, JC and Gigi, they tweeted, but it was just like, one was just broken heart emojis and one was a heart with the wilting rose emoji. Cora Jade, I think, tweeted something similar. And then Shazza McKenzie, who is an Australian wrestler, was like, I hope she posts whatever the fuck she wants and makes all the money. Basically was it. And then that's it. And then I think Grayson Waller has since come forward and said something about how she was a pillar of NXT, and I haven't read his direct quote, so I don't know exactly what was said, but he, as far as I know, he's the only male wrestler who has publicly supported her, which is extremely interesting to me, that they're not just not he's the only man, but that there aren't other women. I don't know if it's because they don't know what the situation is, or if they don't want to rock the boat. They're afraid of their own. Maybe they have their own type of fan time or brand army or OnlyFans or whatever it is. And so maybe they don't want to be scrutinized too closely about the things they're posting. And it's not to say that they're not privately supporting her, which they could be, but it's just interesting that there's not a whole lot of public support from women within WWE for her, which I don't know if it's there, or maybe they're being told not to post something. I don't know, but it's very interesting that they're,
it's entirely possible that they were all called together and been like by the boss and we're told like, you're not going to post about this. Seriously. And
like we're gonna move on from her and not like, I won't be surprised if like they don't mention her again, like just talk about Roxanne. And I hate that some of this is overshadowing Roxanne, because that's
unfair to her.
It's not her fault. She didn't do anything. And she was in line to get the title. That's where they were leading to, and she's a wrestling prodigy, and she's like 21 years old, and she held earlier. She was holding I think she began the year holding the Ring of Honor the Women of Honor title, because she did some stuff with them last year. And so Roxanne is very good. And I hate that this is, and it's not to say that this stuff doesn't need to be talked about with Mandy, because it does. It's not obviously a story that needs to be swept under the rug, but it is kind of taken away from Roxanne a little bit. And so I hope that, I hope people don't think like, oh, when they think of her championship and how it started, like, oh, she only got this title because they fired Mandy for posting the photos she was posting. Which is unfortunate, but that's kind of how, and that's what they do. They pit women against each other. And
they pit the whole locker room against each other in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely. Which is kind of what they could be doing now by having them say, you do not publicly post anything about her being gone. We don't want attention brought to it, even though firing her the day after Vince McMahon.
We're getting enough bad PR.
It's just, and then it goes back to the pay stuff. Like, they clearly are not paying women enough. And then we see the stuff with Sasha that has now come out is, she is, yes, we'll pop this message up here. Or I think that might be what you're getting.
Oh, do we get a message?
We did. Hi. Every company's doctrine is to control the message. Yes. Yep. And to control the women. If we're being honest, that's what it is. It's controlling the women, because and then people can
controlling women is kind of like institutionalized into our society. Just a little bit of a lot. And like judges are telling me what I can and can't do and stuff. That's only about control, because that's largely done by, women still are underrepresented even in politics. So just kind of, I don't think that I think men are evolving. I think that there are some mindsets, but it's too bad, because you have sometimes where there's like a woman wrestler comes out and she says something and a bunch of guys jump out and they're like, she's right, and all of these things. And in this case, you don't have anybody saying anything. But I still think, and I genuinely believe this, it's got to be the Vince thing, is that the threat of him coming back. And we've seen, like, the reign of terror has almost been exposed in a way because of what's gone on.
Right.
So we all...
Well, and we even know that Vince was... there was a woman who came forward last year, one of the 4 women. She was brought in to do a couple of things on TV, and she says that he was sending her nude pictures. So he was
that
doing
doesn't even surprise me.
No, and she is. I guarantee you, she is not the only one that he has done that to. That works for that company. I guarantee you.
Oh, definitely
that he has sent that to other women within that company who, whether they were contracted or brought in for a couple of episodes or they were longtime talent. Can
you imagine if your male boss started sending you like?
Yeah, I don't want to imagine that, but yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it's so it's just in so many different. There's just so many different levels. Like, you're just trying to do your job. You're just trying to do your job. You're just trying to come to work, and you're getting inappropriate pictures from your boss. Like, that's just and if you say no or you say something, then you're going to be punished for it. And it's just I can't. And then you have and I do want to say one thing that I appreciated with this reporting when it came out on Wednesday was Sean Ross Sapp said, we're not going to shame people. If you're going to do that, do not do it under this post. Good. That's not what we're here for.
That seems pretty, that seems like in keeping with kind of how his ethics seem to flow.
Well, and I appreciated that. And he was just right off. Well, and when some of the stuff came out earlier about some of the other women, one of them was a woman who worked for WWE for 10 years. And so people were like trying to go through the website and figure out who it was. And I'm like,
the guy got pushed out of Vince got pushed out of his company for sexual abuse and coercion, and it was always about controlling the women. Mm-hmm. Whether it was, I'm going to pay you this much so that we can be boyfriend and girlfriend, or I'm going to slip you some extra money and you're going to do have a wardrobe malfunction in the Attitude Era during a bra and panties match.
Right.
It just,
that's the only thing all you can say about it.
We're going to fire someone that we sexualize for using her own self
for how she's. And I was, exactly, because I was like, she is consenting to putting that stuff on her website for paying customers.
You're essentially being like, well, we're the pimp, we got to get paid, and I'm like. I hate to be so controversial, spicy take here, but it's true. The vibe is not.
Yeah, the vibe is you're making money off of your body, and only
we can do that.
Only we can make money off of your body. And it's.
But then of course, then the shamings are. But also, you're a whore, so whatever. It's like,
right, yeah, and it's just very interesting that I guess I'm not surprised. On the one hand, that it was Shawn Michaels who did that but there's been some stories about him, and there was a video a few years ago that came out, and I don't know the story that was told. I don't know how correct it is, but it was from another wrestler, and it was about Shawn Michaels back in the day. Given some, I don't know. I'm not trying to be like liable or anything. That's just the story that was told on the internet from another wrestler. But just he was doing some engaging in some very inappropriate things, which we do know about. There are some that's well documented, but there are some other stories that have been told about him, maybe using some date rape drugs.
Oh, lovely.
And so I just think it's very interesting that he is the one. Again, I'm not saying whether those are true or not. I'm just saying that's the story that was going around from this video a year or two ago on Twitter. That was going out. And so it's just very interesting that he is the one who was like, she has to drop the title.
She gotta go. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Good. Like, she can go establish her own limited liability company and just go to town.
You know what? Wants. Well, she has already. Which I had even said on Tuesday. I was like, her subscriptions are going to go up because people are gonna want to see what got her fired. And so good for her. Well, she's raised her prices.
I would too.
She went. So I saw something the other day saying that she's now charging $40 a month. And I was like, which is probably smart because they probably know they're going to pay to see what it is, and then they're going to cancel their subscription. So why not get a little bit more money before they do that. And so, cash in on it. And some people are like, well, is that, is she gonna, if she's not on TV, people aren't gonna care anymore. And I was like, there's ways of staying in the public eye. Like Mandy can get attention and get them, she can sell the subscriptions. There's other avenues that there's so many avenues that she could pursue. Like even if she didn't want to continue wrestling, she could why not make, which is the conversation that a lot of people I've seen have, why not make a shit ton of money and not be killing yourself in the ring for it?
Then I think Dave was talking about the fact that, he could see her doing fan engagement stuff.
She could. If she doesn't want to be in the ring anymore, I mean, why not make that money instead of, sacrificing your body 300 days a year?
Is she friends with Mercedes? She can go get into Hollywood, maybe.
Yeah, she could. There's a lot of avenues for her. And if she wants to continue wrestling, I do think I've seen the comment a lot, and I'll put this comment up here in just a second.
Okay,
but we've seen, I hope to see Mandy Rose at Impact Wrestling. Their locker room is more supportive and free to do anything outside of wrestling, like Jordan Gray says. Yes, Jordan is a perfect example of somebody who puts out a lot of content, and she puts out, I guess what some might, I was like, some might consider, I don't think it's very risque, but I'm sure some people probably do. But she puts out a lot of really good content, and so
there's a lot of old videos.
And I think, and Brace for Impact made I heard Mike and JD were talking about it. Impact doesn't have the sponsors, so they can do.
That's fair, because they just have their allotted spot on that.
So they
network.
could go. She could eat. So that's one of the reasons I don't. First of all, I just don't see her going to AEW. I don't know that. I just don't really see a place for her in the women's division. I could be completely wrong, especially if they are going to be paying Sasha Banks. A lot of money will probably be going her way. But if the sponsors are an issue, then obviously AEW is not going to be the place for her to go, because they have sponsors. They've got the Warner Brothers deal.
Yeah, I was going to say Warner Brothers already, like, they let them get away with a lot. So I don't know. But
there's she would have certain boundaries, I think. And I don't know that she's willing to concede to those boundaries when she is making so much money. And she
could take like a few appearances on a few indie shows and make a buttload of money.
Yeah. And she could do things like WrestleCade. She could do there's like all kinds of cons that she could do. And she would be fun. That's keeping her in the public eye. It's making her money. And, so she's a champion. She is, regardless of what you think of her ability in the ring she was a champion for over 400 days. So she can use that to her advantage. And so, but I do think Impact would be a good place for her. And I agree that, so yes, they don't have the sponsors that they have to answer to in the way that AEW and WWE does, but they are pretty open to letting, talent make money however they see fit. And so I think Mandy could easily go over there, and I think she would do, would do pretty well. And she could take that gimmick and kind of, obviously she can kind of rebrand it a little bit if she wanted to, but I think she could take that gimmick and it would work in Impact. Like, I think she could probably get away with, she could, if she wanted to keep on brand, I guess, because that's the brand that she's selling, then she could take that. But if she wanted to do something completely different and be like, you're not going to sexualize me, I am going to say what happens to me in my body and how I'm presented. So she could completely change that if she wanted to, but she could continue down that, and that can help her with her subscriptions and the things that she posts and whatever avenue she pursues outside of wrestling. Like all of that could benefit her. So I hope whatever happens, I hope that she is happy and she's doing what she wants and making money on her own terms. And I hope that, there's been some talk that she could potentially come back to WWE, but do you want to go back to a company like that?
I don't know.
That fired you because they didn't like the content you were posting, and they didn't like you taking control of your body. Do you want to go back to that? Maybe they work something out, but I don't know. Maybe if she needs, maybe after a few months and, things die down a little bit, maybe she would reconsider, but that's pretty crappy.
Well, everything just blows over, right? That's the Vince theory.
That's what I've heard.
The Vince theory of things.
And so I did see this comment. And I was going to wait until we talked about Sasha, but I will bring it up here. So one of the comments is, one big problem across all sports and business is equal pay for women, which is 100% correct. That is in all walks of life and all sorts of businesses and careers. That is definitely an issue. And we have seen now, because of the things that have come out about Sasha Banks this week, there is a huge issue with equal pay just within WWE. And so if you have not heard, which you probably have if you're watching this, there was a report that Sasha was released back in the summer as originally reported. So a lot of people owe Raj Giri a huge apology, because the man bet his career on it, and turns out he was right.
Been right the whole time, I guess. I mean,
yeah, he's been right.
I've been paying attention just because I was curious as to like whether or not. I mean, I'm not like, I have no comment on the issue. I'm just curious to see like.
So apparently, what has come out is one of the reasons that Sasha did not come back to WWE is because they did not think that she was worth the same amount of money as Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair, who are reportedly making upwards of $1 million per year, which is still much, much less than the men, especially the top men in that company. And they can, I'm sure there's the argument, well, they have merch sales. Sure. But why do they have those merch sales? Because they are not equaling, they're not getting the money that the men are making. Somebody said that Jinder Mahal made $1 million a year. You can't pay Sasha. You can't pay her that. You can't pay Charlotte and Becky more than that. It just is mind-blowing.
The amount of the companies that they hang on those two ladies, and the fact that is their. Because I mean, we're talking somewhere between $2 and $4 million in. I mean, we have, because there's not like a union and it's not too public. We can't exactly nail down exactly what everybody's contracts are, but it's basically like this guy's making $5 million and this guy's making $4 million and this guy's making $5 and $6 million, and it's like, well.
The women aren't making even close to that.
You're making $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Singular.
Yeah. And then they're saying,
but those merch sales will definitely make up for that, right?
Yeah.
That'll definitely get me the like $2 million more that I'm not making, even though I'm like putting just as many butts in seats.
Well, and then you also have like, I think they have changed the policy somewhat, and I don't know the exact details, but that was kind of the thing with Cameo. That's why so many of the wrestlers were doing Cameo, is because they were trying to make additional income, and they were making a lot of money, and WWE wasn't getting a cut at the time. And they had a huge problem with it, obviously. And then they made them shut them all down. And then you could buy select cameos from select wrestlers, and they still got a cut of it. And I know, like I said, I think back in May that was changed somewhat. I don't remember what the details were, but I mean, so this has been an ongoing issue with them about trying to collect money from their talent.
Mentality. It's the idea here is like, pay everybody. Pay them equally, pay them enough and what they're worth, because you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
Right. Yeah. And it's just,
and then you don't have any problem. I don't need another job if my main job pays me what it should pay me. And
right. And I think
they don't even provide healthcare for these freaking people.
No, they don't.
They're contractors. It's
There's so many layers to this, and it just keeps getting brought into light. But one of the first things I wondered after reading, and there's also another reason, is which we'll get to that part in a minute, about that they think Sasha is past her peak, which I will rage about that in a minute. But if they aren't paying Sasha Banks $1 million, I can only imagine what they are lowballing Trinity. Because Naomi clearly was not making that type of money. And if she's wanting to come back, what are they offering her? Probably peanuts. Probably a hot dog and a handshake. It's probably what she's being offered. Maybe 2 hot dogs. But I mean, they couldn't even they could never cash in on Naomi. Like when she came back a few years ago and basically took over Twitter from people who never even watched wrestling, and they were like, who is this? That should have been there's other times that they should have pushed Naomi because she's just fantastic and she's really over with the fans and things like that. So they've had a lot of missteps with her, but that moment should have been the time you cashed in on her. And they couldn't make that happen. So I can only imagine if they were trying to bring her back. And if they were trying to bring Sasha back, I assume that they were trying to bring Trinity back as well. But then I was like, what the hell are they even offering her if they're not going to even offer Sasha big money? And I was like, I can only imagine how much they've lowballed her. And
like her own, she's not like probably getting paid like what her own husband was getting paid at
probably
the same
not.
time. Like that's for doing the same job, for being just as integral in what that's. I mean, I wasn't paying super close, but I know that she was involved in that storyline for a while.
Yeah, she's been involved in a lot of stuff.
I know that she was a champion too. She headlined WrestleManias and stuff not like too long ago. I mean, she wasn't like the main event, but she was in main like
big stories
on the card, and she was. I mean, she had her WrestleMania moments and
yeah. So it's just really So the other part of it though that has come out is they think that Sasha Banks is past her peak, which is unbelievably absurd.
Wait a minute.
How
old is Sasha Banks?
She will be 31 in January.
Oh, I'm sorry. And she's past her peak?
Right. And
okay.
And this is not to, and I'm not trying to be ageist or anything like that, but if looking at the women who are making $1 million, Charlotte Flair is 37 years old. She's 6 years older than her. Becky, I believe, is 34, 35. So Sasha is the youngest. And they're saying that she's past her peak.
What they should be doing is paying her money because she's the future of their company in a lot of ways.
You would think. Well, and they even, a few people...
7 years doesn't seem like a lot, but it can be a lot at certain times. It can be totally copacetic, and then sometimes that's a big gap of time because there's decade jumps.
And there's things that they've talked about before where I've seen where they were saying women in wrestling generally only have 7 or 8 years when you have men who wrestle, look at Randy Orton. And John Cena obviously is not an active competitor, but he just celebrated his 20-year anniversary. So Randy Orton celebrated his 20-year anniversary this year as well. And then you have women, and that's why they were saying some women were afraid to become a mother in that, because it takes away from their 7 years. And so you see the stuff with Becky, and thank God she was able to she can do both. And the same thing with Candace. Candace was Candace was able to have have a child and able to come back. And then Asuka, she's a mother as well. And so you just see, so they can obviously do both, but it's like that 1950s argument of you have to pick one. Do you want to be a mother or do you want to have a career? And we should not be having that conversation when it's almost 2023.
Except that there is something of a paradox there, because also at the same time there's a lot of pressure on women in society to go have a career regardless of being mom, and there's a lot of pressure on them to do what Becky's doing or what Asuka's doing, which is you can be a mom and you can be
and I heard something about
how about letting people pick their own path and giving them their own agency so that they can choose that.
Look at Hangman Page. He left earlier during probably the hottest run of his career to take paternity leave, and nobody were like, oh, he shouldn't be picking fatherhood over this.
Yes, they did.
Were they? I saw
things. Whole toxic element of.
I must have had those people blocked
because I didn't
see that conversation. Luckily,
there's a whole bunch of men who rage against that sort of thing.
I don't doubt that. But I don't remember that conversation happening with Hangman. I'm not saying it didn't. I just luckily apparently I got spared from seeing that.
No, yeah, you did, because it's me. When you look at people who it's do you understand that this would be good for you too? like where they're like, he should be a tough guy, and I know that that's programmed into men, and they make that like that's like men are like programmed to be tough and not to want to be fatherly. But then there's again the same paradox where it's like, but also you're supposed to be an awesome father and you're supposed to be there for your kids all the time, and it's like, well, you can't have it both ways then.
Right.
So when a guy says that he wants to take paternity leave, like that's him saying, okay, you guys said I need to be a good dad, so I'm going to go be a good dad for 4 to 6 weeks and help my wife and my baby. And y'all go, oh, what a weak ass jerk who needs to like, that's not what he should be doing. He should be here.
He should be putting food on the table.
He should be here making money for his family is what they get a lot. They get, he should be at home or at work making even more money. He shouldn't be staying at home. He should be working twice as hard.
Right.
It's like, can we like do away with, like you said, those 1950 toxic elements of just ridiculousness that don't have anything to do with the actuality of modern life?
Right. Yeah, one would think, but we're still having conversations. We're still having conversations about if women can make money off their sexuality that they're already that the company is cashing in.
I just love this. I love this. The third paradox. It's okay if I make money off your body. But it's not okay if you make money off your body.
Yeah, we can't have that. Well, but
only if you're a girl.
Then if you do, then you're
we need to start to see. I would be interested to see how men are treated.
Well, and you kind of see though that I'm sure
sooner or later some of the men are gonna like get hip to this and start to do stuff.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. I'm sure there are men out there who do have these type of sites, but I don't hear about them. And why is it? Because and in a lot of cases it's because the men are being paid really well.
Yeah, so they don't need to worry about it.
They don't need to. So they don't need to put out this content. And then there were people, and I remember there were people even, and just remembered about how people were shaming Jordan Grace for some of the things she was posting. And then they were shockingly, and she made a comment, I believe, that she made enough money from her website that she was able to help Jonathan fund a Terminus show.
That's awesome. See, she's using
which is amazing. But then they were like, I can't believe that you would do that. I'm like, she's making money and she's helping her husband. Who gives a shit? And then of course I'm sure there are people like, Jonathan shouldn't need his wife to post pictures of her body to help him pay for stuff, which I'm sure that was the conversation that was had
a big reflection of, like, we talk about it all the time, how wrestling is a giant mirror to what goes on in everyday life. I mean, this is a story for so many talented, hardworking women and men who do want to, like, not just be strictly a provider of money and nothing else. Like it. But I mean, the biggest issue this week, I think, to come out of this week is like the treatment of women in this company specifically, and from everything from the inappropriate touching all the way to the bottom line, the thing that is the most important thing that they even bring into stories all the time.
Yeah.
This is the most important. I gotta feed my kids. I mean, that story
that was literally Heath Slater's gimmick. Was I got kids?
He's got kids.
And they even still talk about, like, this Thursday on Impact. He and Rhino were facing Motor City, and the fans were chanting because Chris Sabin was in the ring and was beating him up, and they were chanting, "He's got kids."
Didn't he get a pair of trunks at some point that said, "I've got kids"?
I think there was. I know there was definitely shirts. There was merch of that with his "I got kids," and I think Chris Sabin said, "I have nieces and nephews," and then they started chanting, "You're my uncle" or something like that. So I mean, so clearly, like
we were this close to getting a murder grandpa chant going at Forbidden Door. It was so close for Minoru,
you got the uncle
from Minoru Suzuki, and I just so we have lots of family members in wrestling.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, exactly. So then, they did use that. That was literally Keith Slater's gimmick was I got kids.
They love to throw that in there. You're out here hurting me and taking food out of my kid's mouth. Like, how many promos have you heard with that? Yeah, and that's across like every company you watch. That's
And I do want to make a quick aside that because we are talking about WWE specifically. I don't know that, and this is not to say that AEW is underpaying women there. I don't know what they make, and it's not. And some of the Toni Storm still has her OnlyFans. Is it because she doesn't make enough in AEW, or is it just because it's a really good source of income? Maybe it's a mixture of both. And so I do want to say that we're not just, they're anti-WWE. Well, yes, in many ways I am, but I'm just saying I don't know. This situation so far has not come to light in AEW. That's not to say that the women are underpaid there and things like that. But I'm sure that they are, because women are just in wrestling are generally underpaid, like we talked about, in every walk of life.
Like 80, it's 82 cents to every dollar.
And that's also, and then you break down that's white women who are of color are paid even less. And I thought I do want to talk about that really quick, because some people are like, we're making this a race thing. No, this is true. This is true across all businesses that women of color are paid less. So you have Charlotte and Becky who are making more than Sasha, and you do have to look at that. You can't take.
You just blew my mind, because
you can't take the race factor completely out of that, especially when it happens in corporate America. This is happening where even though women are generally underpaid, white women still generally make more money than women of color. And so that is happening in WWE. And so, yes, I guess it is a race thing, because it's true. It's accurate.
Well,
and you're coming from a company who has had a long line of how they treat Black wrestlers, and how long did it take them to have a Black world champion. And we've had there's been the conversations about Kofi and about Bobby Lashley, and so these things are and they have had a really long history of how they portray wrestlers of color. And so it is a relevant conversation to say that is Sasha making less because she's a woman of color? I don't know, but it is statistically that is happens a lot, where white women do make more, even though, and the whole spectrum, women obviously make less than men, especially white men. But and then when you break it down even further, white women tend to make more money than women of color. So yes, that is a valid argument when looking at the situation of Charlotte, Becky, and Sasha. And and even Naomi. And I've seen the question is Bianca. What is she? Bianca how much is she making? And she's clearly a star. And that also brings back the factor, which I think I started to talk about a few minutes ago, and then we were talking about other stuff, but the point was brought up about how they teased Sasha at SummerSlam to be Bianca's opponent to sell more tickets, but then you're telling me she can't sell tickets and she's not a draw, but you don't think Bianca can sell tickets to SummerSlam, so you've got to tease Sasha potentially coming back to sell these tickets, but she's not a draw and she's not worth $1 million. Like, make it make sense.
I think this might be the best thing. I mean, she's taking care of. She's a good person to actually take a look at in terms of kind of taking care of herself in she's obviously got the Hollywood connection now, so she's going to be able to work with that, and maybe she can go back to doing indie wrestling and stuff like that. But it's ridiculous to even say that she isn't worth the same thing as the other two.
Right. And I was like, and if you have
you have to appeal to a younger audience. You don't have the luxury of these two women are getting older. This is a younger woman. She's still drawing people. You're still using her to draw.
And they barely even mentioned the Mandalorian when she was they didn't really do a whole. I mean, they mentioned it, but they didn't do. If it was The Rock or John Cena, that was doing that, then obviously, I mean, even you could even make the argument for Batista. Then they would have like hyped the hell out of that, but they barely did with Sasha.
They have a long history of like from JR's books. I did pick up on this because he was there for such a long time, and they have Vince has a long history of not. He picks and chooses what he thinks will be beneficial and what won't. Like he wouldn't let Chris Jericho do Dancing with the Stars for the first time, but then, and Chris Jericho was like, but this will be so good for business because it will draw people over here. And he's like, no, I don't want you doing it because I don't want you working on like a rival network or some dumb shit like that.
Yeah.
And then the next time it came around, he actually let him do it. And he's like, hey, this is really good for business. This made a lot of people come over here. And it's like, oh, well, now that it's your idea, it's totally fine.
He's totally one of those people. Well, because didn't the Miz do Dancing with the Stars as well?
What's that now?
Didn't Miz do Dancing with the Stars like a few years later?
Keebler's done it. I think that, I mean, Jericho must have, like, in a little bit of a way, kind of opened the door for that.
And now you see Jericho's he's on The Masked Singer. And I'm sure Tony was like, hell yeah, that'll draw some eyeballs over here. Go do it.
Well, Tony Khan, in the meantime, because he gets it, is doing that. He's like, sweet. All these people are going to see how hot he is and tune into AEW Dynamite. And maybe I can finally get that women's number up a little bit. Although I think it did go up last week. Like it was like the first significant rise in a long time. So Winter is Coming was the I don't know, whatever you did in there.
I didn't get the snow at Winter is Coming.
No.
Damn it. Did not get it. I did the prophecy, it was not fulfilled.
You know, I mean, time and space is big, so
this is true.
I mean, it could happen at any unexpected time.
It could.
I mean, 2023 looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to Wrestle Kingdom. I don't know.
Yeah, who's going to be at Wrestle Kingdom?
I think that would be. I think that would be someone who doesn't draw. Oh no, wait, it's somebody
past her peak is going to be at Wrestle Kingdom and has apparently multiple New Japan dates scheduled, and
they're going to pay her apparently,
and can potentially be Saraya's mystery partner in January.
Yeah,
but she's not a draw, so I don't know why they would do that.
Who would care about that?
Who would care about Sasha Banks being at freaking Wrestle Kingdom?
I mean, nothing. No slight against Mandy, but having Sasha Banks in AEW would be a way bigger deal to me than having Mandy Rose in it would. Just me personally,
I think most
woman's opinion.
I think most people would agree with that, and because you have all of the things that Sasha does, she was in The Mandalorian. She just finished making her first film. Like she just tweeted that like 2 or 3 weeks ago. There's not been a whole lot of deals on it, but she just finished her first movie, so she's got, and that will probably be the first of many for her. And so she's got all of these things that she's doing, and she's been training this whole time. Like we talked about it last week. She's been down in Mexico training. She's been training with Juventud Guerrera. She's been doing all kinds of stuff. So, I don't see how she feels like she's already a star, but she feels like she is on the verge of she's becoming WWE does not have a crossover star anymore. That's been an argument for a long time that they don't have a lot of new household names anymore.
Right.
And then but Sasha she feels like she's on the verge of just becoming this massive star that people know from, and now they're going to know her from, they could potentially know her from AEW and New Japan and not WWE, which is their own damn fault. Because
I mean, that's fine with me because that helps the fact that those are two shows I enjoy, and those two shows keep competition alive and make it so that people like Sasha has a chance of going out and forcing the women's, like, because if she can't, I mean, from my understanding and from what, like, it sounded like what Dave was talking about in terms of like her doing the Tokyo dates and stuff and working with them, they're paying her. She's getting paid. This is not like, she's not doing this for peanuts. She went there and asked for a good amount of money and apparently got it. And it's like, well, Okay, she's not a draw. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Your loss.
And I can't.
We're the winners.
Yeah, and because even if she's doing some of the dates in Japan, and I don't know if she'll have a lot to do with Stardom, but the women we talked about this last week, the IWGP women's title will be defended, or the women will be wrestling on the Strong shows. So Sasha could be on the Strong shows, and that would be huge for them, because we've talked about it before. Strong is overlooked a lot. It's an hour show. There's 3 matches. There's always bangers. There's always the match that looks good on sheet ends up being way better than you can imagine. And they always, like, we talk about that all the time. Can you imagine Strong and having Sasha Banks? Well, I'm sure. And that's the thing. I don't know that she would be keeping her name. I'm assuming she's going to be Mercedes of something. Variation of Mercedes. And so I've got to get in the habit of calling her a different name. But I mean, can you imagine having somebody of Mercedes caliber on a Strong show? Like, what that would bring? Like, Kenny Omega filmed a match for Dark yesterday, and like Twitter was like, I can't believe he's going down to Dark. Well, he's used to be on Dark all the time, but it's a wrestling show. But see, I mean, so I guess that would kind of be the equivalent, is having somebody of Sasha Banks's stature on Strong would be huge for them. It would draw a lot of eyeballs, and there's, like we've said, there's some amazing wrestling on that show, and it's not just Sasha. There's other incredibly talented women from Stardom who will be on these shows, and to have Sasha in that mix, I think proves that Stardom doesn't just take anybody. You know, they are known the world over for having the best female talent in all of wrestling, and to have somebody like Sasha associated, even if she's not with them and she's more on the IWGP women's side of things, that's still huge. And if New Japan is, like we said, I think we talked about this last week, we don't know exactly what their intentions are. I don't think they're ever going to have like a true women's division or anything like that.
No, and what I was hearing, and just to interject real quickly, is that they are seeing the value of having women's shows on the North American thingy. Right. And so they are doing that just strictly for money.
So of course you would
have an interest.
Why would you not attach somebody like Sasha to that?
That's exactly what... I mean, a lot of their strategy sounds to be, you're going to give up this huge name, then we're going to take this huge name, and she's going to be what helps promote it around America.
She could anchor that division, or I guess
and that just pulls in eyes on the entire Strong show.
Yes, exactly. And I think there is no downside to that. Because again, Strong has some incredible wrestlers over there. They've got some great champions. And now we have Motor City 2 belts because they won the Impact titles on Thursday. So now they're Strong.
It made me realize and remember that Filthy Tom is wrestling Shibata, right?
Yes, at Yes, it's a show in Japan. I cannot.
Anniversary. It's the Inoki show. It's the one that he left the money in his will to have another crossover.
And and so Shibata and Tom Lawler are gonna. And I don't know. Yeah, it's like a cross between MMA and wrestling, I believe.
It's gonna be in the old style of the sort of like Pancrase and War and MFW and that this stuff that Onita did and people like that. But also because Inoki did a lot of shooting on people, and so he because he believed the slapping thing and whatever. So it's going to be, he wanted to have one more old school ode to the old 70s hardcore MMA crossover stuff. They fought the Gracies, that kind of deal.
Right.
They wanted to have a card like that. And so
which is awesome. And I think
I can't wait to see that show. That show's going to be fun.
Yeah. And I was thinking to have Tom Lawler kind of be that bridge, because Tom Lawler is somebody who openly, not that there are not other male wrestlers who do, but Tom Lawler openly talks about the Japanese women's wrestling. He talks about women's wrestling in general, but he loves that. And we talked about his match with Julia at the crossover show. It was him and Julia against Zack Sabre Jr. and
they were so
and I just blanked on her name. Yes, thank you. Or no, so I mixed those up. Yes, so it was Zack Sabre Jr. and Julia
and Tom Lawler and Suri.
Yes, and that one of my favorite matches on the show.
It was so good.
And I think he was talking to he's wrestling. So there's something else. Isn't he wrestling another woman, or they're tag teaming or something?
Yeah, and I can't remember who it is, but he loves wrestling them. He apparently tells Brian Alvarez
I think would be a really good ambassador of bringing women in. And can you? And I don't know. I guess it would be an intergender type of thing, not intergender, mixed tag.
Mixed tag.
But could you imagine him teaming up with somebody like Sasha Banks? Like that would be like, I literally just thought about that. But could you imagine?
2023 is actually going to be a really good year for wrestling.
Yeah, and I said this on Twitter, and I'll say it again. I can't wait for Mercedes to have bangers in Japan and America and make a shit ton of money doing it. Because she deserves it.
Because she doesn't draw. She's terrible draw.
She can't put on match. She's past her peak. She can't draw. Peak. Not worth $1 million.
That's fine. That's fine. She can't draw for you. That's fine. She can draw for all the rest of us, and we can enjoy it.
Yes. And then I hope and we talked about this last week as well. I don't know what Trinity's plans are, and I don't know what she's doing, if she's going back to WWE, but wherever she winds up, I hope that she's happy and that she's getting paid well. And so just want to throw that in there too, that, Trinity, because obviously Sasha is commanding a lot of the attention as she should, but Trinity should not be forgotten in that. And now we have the stuff with Mandy Rose. Hope she makes a shit ton of money doing whatever it is that she does too. Yeah. She sticks on wrestling. And then I hope that more women will, because there's probably many more women that could come forward against Vince McMahon, and I hope they find the courage to do so. And if they do not, I hope they find peace and happiness and everything that they deserve, especially after going through all this crap, because it's a terrible thing for them to have to deal with. And now to have to deal with, then you have to now people are kind of scrutinizing, well, if this happened to her, did it happen to her too? And which,
and the potential of him actually coming back, that can't help.
Yeah. Can you imagine what kind of nightmare that must be?
Those people, there was a huge weight off. Largely people are reporting that people I trust are saying that the people are happier in general just because.
I wonder why.
Yeah, right. But so that's got to be scary for everybody. It wasn't the funniest meme in the world, but it was Regal's no,
yeah.
I can't imagine that they're bored, because there are ways to keep him, at least. They could drag it out, is what I would say. I don't know if they can completely prevent him from coming back, but I think that they could. They could definitely keep him wrapped up in administrative legal crap.
Good.
That would drag out. It sucks because you have this black cloud hanging over you of, are we going to lose the lawsuit that says that Vince can come back and he can come back?
That's going to probably be a black cloud until the day he dies, because he's just going to keep doing it. But then if more things come out, then, obviously that's just going to be.
Well, you better stop saying that, because every time you say that, more stuff comes out, and I just.
Good. It should.
It should come out, but I hate that there's that much.
No, I hate that there's that much too, but I don't think these few women that have come forward, I think that's just a very, very small percentage of the women.
When you read about the history of the time that Vince has been in wrestling, and you read about the business, and you look at the history, and you hear it from wrestlers and bookers and Scarlett's mouths. I've read a lot this year. I've had a mega reading wrestling book year.
I'm glad that you have. You can inform me on this stuff.
He is maximum toxic. He is maximum. Mm-hmm. He seems to be he is the perfect picture of what the bad and good of wrestling, wrestling genius, but this is how gross and bad and icky and
Well, and that's the whole thing. Like,
business can be
right, and then that's the whole thing. Like, both things can be true. Nobody is trying to take away what he did for the business and all of that stuff. Like, all of those.
No, it makes it suck. Actually, frankly,
it does. Yeah, because I keep hearing people are like, "Oh, well, people aren't remembering what he changed the business and he was a wrestling genius." Yes, he can be all of those things, but he can also be an awful, terrible, horrible person
tyrannical, who did absolutely douchebag,
awful things to people and to women in particular to get his company there, or because he thought his company made him invincible and gave him the power to do these things. So all of the things are true and they should be talked about. It shouldn't just be one or the other. It should be like when you say Vince McMahon was a genius. Yes, he was, but he also did all the things that were talked about in the Vice documentary. It's not a hit piece. He did all of those things.
Yeah.
He did all these things that we don't even know about.
There's lots of like, we can go into this. H.P. Lovecraft was a really great, scary writer, but that guy was kind of a total misogynistic, like arrogant dick. So, I mean,
you can do both.
It's
and it's the same thing with, like, we talked about a little bit ago when we were talking about Ric Flair. Yes, he was all of these things. He was a great wrestler. He was a superstar. He was he brought the money, tons of companies, tons of money.
Well, his influence on the business is undeniable.
Nobody is saying that doesn't erase that. But the whole full picture is that he did some really awful things to women, and they are both true, and one doesn't cancel out the other. Like, it doesn't. Just because he was great and did all these things does not mean that he didn't do these things to these women, which is kind of goes back to the whole speaking out thing. Yeah, they are really, some of these guys are really great wrestlers, but they did some awful things to women. And so they need to be held accountable for those things. And again, like we've talked about before, cancel culture does not exist. It's called accountability. And there's not a whole lot of it in the wrestling business.
That's exactly right. It's not about cancel culture, folks. No, it's about it's a fact. These things are factual. There is evidence. These things happen. People witness them. This is not hearsay. This is fact. We can prove it. We have empirical evidence of this thing. Like, deal with it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you don't like my team is under attack, and so I will defend it no matter how ridiculous. Like that.
It's obnoxious.
Stop. That's not the hill you want to die on.
No, go touch some grass and put your energy elsewhere, please.
Go see some people, or go to ice cream shop, but whatever you like, whatever is the healthy, like, but also a treat for yourself, and go enjoy it, and go watch other people smiling and laughing, and enjoying the air that they're breathing.
Yeah,
like it's and for Christ's sake, everybody, can we just, America? It's been like 250 years. Can we just pay women and take care of women the same way that we do men? And just,
I mean, that would be nice.
We need to take care of the workers. We need to take care of working class people anyway.
Yeah.
Let's just take care of all of them at the same rate, because they're all being equally exploited by capitalism. So
yes,
I mean, or whatever. I mean, what? What? It was weird. What?
I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't hear anything.
I didn't hear anything.
I didn't hear a thing. But yeah. So
what are we are figuring out what we're doing for next week, because Christmas falls on a Sunday, and we will not be live streaming next
December 25th. We are figuring out a schedule to record an episode. We may possibly have a guest. We're trying to work with their schedule as well. So definitely make sure you pay attention to Powerbombshells on Twitter.
We'd like to have a very special episode with a very special Fight Game Media friend.
Yes. So we're trying to make that work. Hopefully it will be
subscribe.
If not, we will get this person on as soon as everybody's schedule allows. Excuse me. But this week, definitely. So just keep an eye on Twitter and Instagram, because we'll post what we're doing. again, it will not be a live stream next week. We will probably record sometime during the week. And then so you'll just see when that comes up. It'll be kind of like when the NFL has a Sunday game and then a Thursday game. Yeah. It's kind of what we're doing here, probably.
I got it. That's so funny that you say that. I'm old enough to be a person who still is not, like, it's so ingrained in me. I still forget that there's a Thursday night game a lot of the time.
I rarely watch Thursday night games.
I watched this week because it was the Hawks versus exactly.
And I didn't even realize until because I've not been keeping up. I mean, I do keep up with the Panthers, but I've not kept up with them as much this season. Yeah. For various reasons, which I think I've discussed before. But I didn't even realize they were playing the Seahawks until I was like, oh, my team was playing Mel's team. I was like, I didn't even realize it. And we can have make believe. We won that.
We can have make believe heat between us.
We can have some fake heat.
We can have we got fake beef right now.
I mean, there's a lot of fake beef that's
there
out
is.
There. It's a lot of manufactured beef that's out there, but yeah. But so we will probably be, because the show after that I think is January the 1st. We will probably have a live stream that day.
Because about that. I mean, I don't go out on amateur nights, so.
Yeah, I did find out last night that there is a wrestling show on New Year's Eve at a brewery. But it's also, we had planned on not really doing anything, but
we could see about it. If it turned out that we need to go later, we could always go later.
No, it's not that. It's just that it's I don't know if we're even going to attend the show just because COVID's picking up. I have a really good friend who has COVID right now, and it's a really bad case of it, and it's also flu season and all that good
families
stuff. So I was like, so we were trying to.
Families are coming together again, so that's going to probably
right. And so we were so we talked about, because Nikki and I actually had already talked about how we probably weren't really going to do anything, and then a friend was like, I can't go to this, but this show was happening on New Year's Eve. There's some people on it that we like, so we're like, we're trying to decide. But regardless, it probably won't. It won't. I don't think it'll affect the Sunday show, but it's just whether or not
I plan on it. I think we talked about it last week.
So we will likely, so we'll
Happy New Year.
Yeah, so we'll likely have a recorded show for episode 44, and then episode 45 will likely be a live stream. Of course, keep an eye on our social media, and we'll definitely tell you if that's going to be different or not. But now there may also be we have to take in. There's some issues with the host. I don't know if you saw that. So hopefully we can record this week. I just remembered they're having Fight Game Media's host is having some issues. So hopefully, but that might just be the Patreon side of things, not YouTube. So StreamYard might be good. So,
well, I think the only thing that's being affected, to my knowledge at the current moment, the only thing that's being affected is unfortunately our Facebook group.
No, there's something else.
Okay.
You may not have it. It came out right before we got on air.
You're better at watching The Wire than I am.
I think now that I say that, I think that may just be the Patreon side of things and not YouTube. So it won't affect us at all. So regardless,
pay attention to
our social media, and we'll let you know for
sure. Powerbombshells on Instagram and Twitter and Podbean, and that's where you can get the audio version of this.
Yeah, and if you get the audio version again this week, which we don't blame you, we understand why, but you're also missing out on Mel's fun. She's had fun headwear the last 2 episodes, and if you're listening on then you're not going to be able to see that. And I think if we do whatever we do for the Christmas episode, we'll also sure that will be festive for both of us.
And if you want to give us a Christmas gift, the best thing you could give us would be to just go over to our YouTube channel, because we are probably going to continue to be mostly on YouTube, and subscribe so that because you can set reminders for our show and other shows, and there's a lot of tons of good content. But the streaming, I think, is the YouTube portion of it, however that functions, and again, stay tuned. But more often than not, you subscribing to our YouTube is really going to help us get the word out for all the other stuff that we do here.
And like we've said, we've worked with some fantastic people who constantly put out really good content, and so you will see that on YouTube. And then the Patreon, Of course, we are not on the Patreon, but our friends are, and they deserve your $5 a month if you can spare that. And we recommend definitely giving them, definitely subscribing to them and getting some really good information for sure, because they have some great thoughts and keep up with stuff.
If you know somebody who likes boxing and MMA and all these other things, you can buy the annual subscription and gift it to them.
So we just got a bunch of we just got spammed with a bunch of porn.
All right, well we're gonna get
maybe that's our time to say goodbye, because we just got spammed with 4 poor comments in a row. I mean, I blocked them. So if you're looking for it, if you're watching this back and you're looking for it, it's not there. I blocked it. But
good job, Sam. She's on it. All right. Well, everybody have a Merry Christmas, because we'll probably wish it you again recorded.
Whatever it is that you celebrate. And if you don't celebrate at all, we hope you have a fantastic week, though.
Yeah. Celebrate whatever you celebrate.
Yeah, celebrate yourself.
Just go easy on yourself. Give yourself a big hug. Take care of yourself. Don't feel obligated to go do something that's going to make you feel crappy. That's not worth it. It's Christmas. Watch a good match. Watch some Wrestle Kingdom.
Rewatch this show if you want to.
Yeah, there you go. Or all of
the
our
audio
friends.
version. Come hang out. But yeah, so we hope you have a good week. Keep an eye on the social media. We'll let you know what we're doing for episode 44. And thanks for hanging out with us this week.
Have a good one.